what is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Hifiman HE560 V1. So this headphone has been out for a little while, a few years actually, and it's gone through a couple different revisions. And there's three versions of the HE560. There's the V1, the V2, and the V3. But there's also three versions of the V1, or three revisions, however you want to look at that. And I think the first thing we need to get out of the way is what's the difference between the three revisions of the V1. So the original version of the HE560 V1, V1 Revision 1, the headphone came with the little screw-on SMC connectors, little mini screw-on coaxial connectors for the headphone termination, which a lot of people don't really like that connector, so they switched later. And that revision also comes with a wooden box. And then later Hifiman updated it in the revision 2 to 2.5mm connectors, which is what this has, and a leather box as opposed to the wood box. And this particular unit here is a revision 2, a V1 revision 2. And then the third version came in a cardboard box, a pretty not very spectacular cardboard box, but came with two cables. It came with a 1/4-inch cable and a 4-pin XLR balance cable. And there's a few other differences between the revisions that we'll get into when we go over the build. And then as for the V2 and V3 HE560, so there's a version 2 and a version 3 HE560, which is a little newer. It has like silver metal cups and the newer Hifiman headband that I don't like, and it uses like a silver and orange pattern. And it's supposed to be an Adorama exclusive, but somehow other people are selling it now. And that one is using B-stock leftover drivers because the 560 is no longer made. So, and those I've heard sound really bad. I would avoid those. If you want a 560, just look for a V1. Don't get a V2 or a V3. So as for specs, so these headphones have a frequency response of 15 to 50,000 hertz, a sensitivity of 90 dB per milliwatt. They weigh 375 grams. And this particular version uses 2.5mm here on the build. So the build on these headphones. So all three revisions of the 560 V1 have had build problems. The big one is these plastic yokes here snapping. All three revisions of these have, problems with the yoke snapping. I had a revision 3 of the 560 V1 that had, broken yokes, and luckily Hifiman replaced it for me, which is nice. But yeah, so Hifiman later came out with a reinforced headband where they put some metal in the yokes here for it not to snap. And as far as I know, the really late revision 3 should have that headband. But if you have a revision 2 or a revision 1, it's not going to have it unless, the headband broke and it was replaced. So you want to be weary of that with these. You don't want to throw these around. And then other build problems. So the way the headband adjust mechanism works, it scratches this metal bit like right here. If the camera will focus on it, you can kind of see it's a lot of focus. Yeah, there it goes. But yeah, it just scratches it a little bit right there when it slides up and down, which is a little weird. But other Hifiman headbands do that too, even the newer ones. But yeah, so then overall rest of the build, metal headband up here feels decent enough. The standard Hifiman comfort strap, it's a little stiff, but it works. I mentioned that on the Ananda. The little slide adjustment which scratches the headband, which is a little weird. The plastic yokes, metal honeycomb pattern grill with a little plastic ring right around here. Wood veneer right there. 2.5mm connectors, and then the Focus A pads, which I like a good bit. And yeah, and then other problems with it, just the general Hifiman quality control, drivers dying and whatnot. But yeah, so build has some problems, but it doesn't feel that bad, but this plastic yoke thing feels pretty cheap. And then going on to comfort. I find these actually really comfortable. The pads don't bother me. They don't bother my ears. I really like this version of the Hifiman headband. This, I call this version 2 of the Hifiman headband, which, this suspension strap system with these pads and the swivel. So yeah, I find the comfort of these very, very good. And I can wear these for a long time with no problems. Okay, so let's talk about the cable here real quick. So the cable these comes with is absolutely terrible. I'm going to assume the revision 1 and the revision 2 of the 560 come with a similar cable. I've not had a revision 1, but the revision 2 cable is really bad. It's really stiff and it's really springy. And I had to put this little twist tie on it to keep it together, because I would sit it down on the table for the video and it would just start like springing up like that. As you can kind of tell, even just by me moving it, it wants to spring upright. And it's so stiff and janky, and it's just a really bad cable, which is kind of a shame because it's braided and it has a nice Nutrix connector. I like Nutrix 1/4 inches. They're big and they feel nice and they look pretty good. So that's a shame. However, interestingly, the revision 3 560 I had a cable that looked the same as this, but it wasn't that stiff and it wasn't that springy. It was actually decently nice. And I really liked it. Same with the 4-pin on that. I actually used those on other headphones because it was decently nice. It wasn't as good as like an aftermarket cable like this Periapt here, but it was actually a pretty decent cable. And so once again, not sponsored by them, but Periapt Cables, highly recommended. Check them out for your headphones. They also make some custom stuff upon request. These are some of my favorite cables for the money, and you might want to check these out. Particularly the 4-pin XLR one, and you'll see why when we get into power here. Okay, so this is the box that the version 2 HE560 comes in. Once again, this is exclusive to the revision 2. If you have a revision 1, it'll be wood box. If you have a revision 3, it'll be a cardboard box. But yeah, this is basically the exact same box as the Ananda, if you remember that review of mine. It's just a pleather box. You open it up, it has a space for the headphones and the cable. It goes right in there. This one has a little bit of damage right there in the corner from the last owner, but yeah, nice box overall. Really like it. Once again, good job, Hifiman. Keep it up with your boxes. Okay, and then power real quick before we get into the sound. So you may have noticed that these have a sensitivity of 90 dB per milliwatt. And that is exceptionally low for headphones. Most headphones, harder to drive stuff has like sensitivity, I don't know, 96, 97 dB. Easier to drive stuff will be over 100, but 90 is really low for a headphone. Now it's not as low as something like an HE6, which I think is 82 dB a milliwatt if I remember correctly. But still 90 is pretty low for a headphone. So what that means is these need a good bit of current to be driven properly. So the DAC amp combo I'm currently using is the Army 80i2 DAC. And the way the volume works on that thing is 0 is like full power of the amplifier, and you step down in half decibel increments on the amp. And there's a high and a low, or high power and low power. I think that's what they call it. Instead of high and low gain, they call it high low power. But anyway, most headphones on that thing hang between -35 and -25 decibels. Stuff like the HD800, I don't think I ever really take past -25. Maybe it's a really quiet song, maybe get down to -20. The Verums here hang out above -30 the whole time because they're really easy to drive. These things I've had to take down to like -5 on high power. Everything else low power. These are like the only headphone I have, with maybe the exception of the Odyssey Sign, that I have to take the Army to high power mode to push, and I can almost max it out with these. Now the Army is only 1.2 watts into 32 ohms, but it has really high voltage, which helps a lot with driving headphones. So yeah, you're going to need an amplifier with a good bit of current to drive these. I would probably want at least a full watt at 50 ohms to push these fully. So you're going to want something at least like a Magni or an Atom or a Liquid Spark. I would not recommend these off of like a Fulla or a DAC X6 or an MDA. I don't think that's going to have quite the power you need. Plus the two of those have a higher output impedance because these are planar. So yeah, even though they're 45 ohms, you're definitely going to want an amp with a good bit of power in order to drive these properly. So getting things started off here with the sound. So starting things off with the bass. So the bass on these is really good. It extends nicely all the way down to 20 hertz, nice and flat. So these have the planar bass that people like to meme. Once again, I don't like the term planar bass that much. It's really just sub bass, and some dynamics have planar bass, as we saw last week in the Focal Elex review. But anyhow, these have the sub bass extension that people come to expect from planars. But moving on to the mid-range. So the mids on these seems to dip down a little bit, starting at right around 1K. And it seems to dip down 3 or 4 dB or so until right around 3K, where it starts to come back up. And by about 4K, the upper mids seem to be at around 3 or 4 dB above where the 20 to 1K, I'm going to call it the baseline, was. And that seems to continue throughout the rest of the upper mids and into the treble region, where there's a little bit of variance, and things go up and down a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 dB. But the general upper mids and treble of these seems to be 3 or 4 dB above where the 20 to 1K baseline is, and about 6 or so dB over where the 1K to 3K mid dip was. So that gives these overall a V-shaped signature and makes them a little bit bright overall. Once again, I don't think these are too bright to the point where it would bother anybody unless you're really treble sensitive, or you really like that dark warm Audazee thing, or you don't like maybe some mid-range shout. But yeah, so these have kind of a fun, bright signature that I actually like the signature on these a lot. It's that Hifiman signature. And then the soundstage on these is decently wide, nothing spectacular, but wider than HD650. It's wide enough where it shouldn't bother you. Imaging also really good. Images across pretty nicely. You shouldn't have any problems with the imaging on these. And now on to the few issues with the sound. So my first issue with these is the timbre is a little bit plasticky. Now it's not as bad as it is on the HE400i and the Sundara. The HE400i and the Sundara I think have a lot more plasticky timbre, and they also have a sibilant S sound, which these have just the slightest bit of, but not nearly as bad as the 400i and the Sundara. Personally, I like the HE560 more than I like the Sundara. I was not really much of a fan of the Sundara. I A/B'd it with the HE4XX when I had it, and they sounded very close to me, both in timbre and general FR. So personally, I would take these, well over the Sundara. But yeah, moving on to my next problem after the plasticky timbre. So these sound, overall a bit compressed. They're not the most dynamic sounding thing, especially for the price point, which, if I haven't mentioned the price point yet, these were originally $899. Now, these don't sell for $899 anymore unless you're stupid and you go to Hifiman's website and give me $899 for it. The Amazon price for these as of the time of filming is stupid also. It's like $450. They were $290 a couple months ago on Amazon. But yeah, I'm only going to recommend these used, which these sell $225-ish used, give or take maybe $25. And we'll go back to that a little bit more in the conclusion. But yeah, anyway, so these sound a little bit compressed. The dynamics aren't that good in the price range compared to even like some of the Sennheisers or one of the better AKGs like the 712, or especially the Verums right here. So these sound a little bit compressed. The signature is a lot of fun, but timbre is a little bit off, and they have some compression going on with them, which is a little bit bothersome. But it doesn't kill them for me. I still like these a fair bit. They're pretty fun to listen to, and I don't mind listening to them. So as for other things in the price range, so I mentioned this in the Verum review of the Verum ones here. I still would take these over the 560. Now, personally, I don't like the sound signature of the Verum as much as the HE560, but these just have a lot more detail than the 560 has, which the 560 has pretty good detail, but I think it's lagging behind where the Verum sits personally, and the Verum also has much better dynamics. But yeah, and then the other one would be, if you buy them new, the HD660S, which I actually would take over the 560. These are still a little more fun, but the 660 is a little more technical, more detailed, better timbre, not as compressed sounding. And yeah, I would take the 660S over the 560. But now here's the interesting thing. Buying these used, you can get them about $225 or so for a revision 2 or a revision 3. And that's a little bit interesting because of the recent price hike to the mass drop Sennheiser HD6XX, which I probably should have on the table here. But anyhow. So that makes these used at around the same price as an HD6XX. And I think that makes these an interesting option for people that might find the 6XX a little boring. If you have a 6XX and you think, the treble's, not sparkly enough for you, or I don't know, the bass doesn't extend far enough for you, take a look at one of these used. Now be wary of the headband. If you buy one of these used, especially if it's a revision 2. If it's a revision 3, there's a chance you might have the fixed headband. But if it's a revision 2, unless the owner said he's replaced it with the new one, you're going to want to be careful with these. Don't be throwing them around and stretching them out real quick. And just pick them up. Just spread them out, put them on your head. Be nice and gentle with them, and they shouldn't break. But if they do break, $75 for a new headband if you can't get Hifiman to warranty them for you. But yeah, I would take a look at these, maybe over a 6XX for a little bit different signature. Or if you want to try Planar, I personally don't think it really makes a difference if headphones Planar or dynamic that much. But I digress. If you must try Planar, I would take a look at use one of these over a HE4XX, because these I think are a lot better. The timbre's better detail. Overall, I like these a lot more than I like the HE4XX. So yeah, so to wrap it up here, the Hifiman HE560 V1, I really like it. However, there's some problems. The build's sketchy. The cable's really bad. The sound has got a few problems. A little bit compressed sounding. The timbre's a little plasticky. But, these overall are pretty fun. I enjoy listening to them. But, there's definitely some downsides to these. Price per price, like I said, these used are cheap. But, if you can still find them new for, I don't know, even $289, I would definitely take a look at the Verums over these, because these are just better overall, even though I don't really like the signature as much. But yeah, anyhow, once again, take a look at these, maybe over a 6XX if you want to try something at around the same price range that's a little different. And yeah, definitely get a new cable, check out the Periapts. But nice box, good comfort, fun sound, but just be wary of the problems. But overall, would recommend at their used prices, but don't pay more than $250 for one of these in today's market. If you can find one new for maybe $290, if you don't like buying used, I guess, but I would try to stay at $250 or under for one of these. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my review. Stay tuned, I got some cool stuff coming. Next week might be another Planar if I don't do the Meze 99 Noirs, because I have a pair of those coming in this week. So next week it'll be the 99 Noirs or another Planar. But, not a traditional Planar, something you might not expect. But anyway, links to all my stuff in the description, links of where to buy all this stuff, the Verums, the Periapt cable, as well as mini DSP ears graph, my Twitter, and my contact email. But anyway, thanks you guys for checking out my video. I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.